Happy Wednesday, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Richard Melick. Welcome to Automox's Patch Tuesday breakdown. Okay, let's dive into Patch Tuesday breakdown. First, let's cover a couple of the webinar housekeeping notes. We will be doing a live Q&A at the end of the webinar, but there's a Q&A panel for you to fill in at any time, and we have a team on site that will be answering questions as they come in. Some of them we will select to push out to the crowd. Let's go ahead and get started. My name is Richard Melick. I'm the Senior Technical Product Manager here at Automox. Alongside me is Adam Whitman. Adam, say hello to the beautiful people.
Hey, Richard. Thanks for having me again. And hello, everyone, and good morning to those, and good afternoon.
Adam, what is it you do for us?
I'm a senior sales engineer, so I'm responsible for educating our prospects and customers about the product and helping with any kind of custom integrations that may occur within their organizations. So, product expert.
Awesome. Product expert. We definitely need one of those every now and then. Adam is definitely here to answer all those really technical questions that I can't. That will be the good part of this. We're going to go over today's agenda. We have quite a bit to cover in this case, even though it was a light month. Looking down this, as NSA and the unweaponized vulnerability, we can put that in air quotes if we would like. Yet another remote desktop vulnerability. Gone are the days of Windows 7 Server 2008. Adobe has gone light. And then what's the demo today? I forgot to update this part.
Yep, you got it. So we're doing a demo on CIS benchmark recommendation for password policies.
Awesome. So that's going to be a fun worklet
with those in the future.
Awesome. That's going to be a good worklet, especially in light of the news that has been coming out recently. It's just basic cyber hygiene. Everybody should be applying. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's talk about the NSA. CVE 2020-0601. This has been all over the news. You know it's worrisome. When my mother calls me and she says, "Do I need to worry about this?" Yeah, you kind of do. Of the 49 security fixes released this month from Microsoft, 8 have been rated critical, but this one especially drawing special attention from the NSA. According to reports, the NSA discovered CVE 2020-0601 and actually alerted Microsoft to the problem instead of weaponizing the vulnerability. Now, we in the NetSec community, we are taking that information with a grain of salt. It just seems very unlikely that it wasn't weaponized, but we'll just let that flow. The NSA has even released a statement on this month's Patch Tuesday, specifically discuss a particular vulnerability and encourage users to patch their system. Quote, the NSA is recommending that network owners expedite implementation of the patch immediately, as we will also be doing. Ann Neuberger, head of the NSA cybersecurity group, said on a call with reporters on Tuesday, when we identified a broad cryptographic vulnerability like this, we quickly turned to work with the company to ensure that they could mitigate it. Again, let's take it with a grain of salt. I'm happy that they're releasing out the patch. I'm happy that they are a part of it. It's also the first time that Microsoft has given credit to the NSA for discovery of this vulnerability. CVE 2020-0601 is a Windows crypto API spoofing vulnerability. The vulnerability exists in the way Windows crypto API authenticates elliptic curve cryptography certificates, and it impacts Windows 10 users specifically. Attackers can exploit this vulnerability by using spoofed code signing certificates to sign malicious files and make them appear to be trusted, legitimate providers. Users would have no way of knowing the files are malicious because the digital signature appeared to be from a trusted source. Successful exploitation can allow attackers to run man-in-the-middle attacks and decrypt confidential information. As the NSA cautions, and as we like to say, patching is the most effective way to mitigate the risk of this security vulnerability. What are they saying? They're saying patch your shit. CVE 2020-0601 is not the only critical vulnerability addressed this month, though it is the one getting the most attention. So if you haven't addressed it, please dive into that and take care of it. Next up for January, Microsoft has also released fixes for 3 critical remote desktop vulnerabilities. We're talking CVE 2020-0609, 0610, 0612, 0637, and 0611. This full group is impacting this vulnerability. Now, specifically, CVE 2020-0609 and 0610 are both remote code execution vulnerabilities that exist in Windows Remote Desktop Gateway. Unauthenticated attackers can connect to the victim system via RDP and send specifically targeted requests. Attackers who do successfully exploit this vulnerability can run arbitrary code on the victim machine, allowing them to view and change data, install programs, and create new accounts with full user rights. And once an attacker has access, lateral movement throughout the network is hard to stop. Now think about that. All it takes is one machine not pass, one machine to go down to give access to your full network in most cases. So this is definitely one that you need to think about, as you need to think about all of them. These vulnerabilities are pre-authentication, meaning they require no user interactions to execute. Now, while the other CVE from the NSA was rated at like a 7.4, this CVE 0609, is rated at a 9.8 on the CVSS scale, meaning it's highly likely to be exploited and it has a high severity. Windows servers 2012, 2016, 2019 are impacted by 0609 and 0610. In the update, Microsoft corrects the issues by changing how Remote Desktop Gateway handles connection requests. CVE 2020-0611 is a remote code execution vulnerability that exists in Windows Remote Desktop Client when users connect to a malicious server. Now, that can just happen because somebody clicks on the wrong ad, goes to a website that's been exploited, whatever it might be. It's fairly easy to get a user onto something that they shouldn't be accessing. Attackers can trick users into connecting to a malicious server through a variety of means, as I just talked about, such as DNS poisoning, social engineering, and man-in-the-middle attacks. A legitimate server can also be compromised and used to host malicious code while the attacker lies in wait. If successful, attackers can exploit this vulnerability to run arbitrary code on the computer of the connecting device, allowing them to view and change data, install programs, and create new users' accounts. The updates resolve the issue by correcting how RDC, Remote Desktop Client, handles connection requests. So it's just kind of mind-boggling from our side that this is yet another remote desktop vulnerability. We've seen it. We've seen quite a few of these in the last year. They definitely need to be addressed. You would think that they would have a little bit more foresight to get this taken care of, but hopefully they're on the tail end of this. Let's talk about the tail end of something else. Rest in peace, Windows 7 and Server 2008. As of yesterday, the last patches for these two operating systems have been released for free. Now, if you are paying for extended support, of course, you will receive the extended support. Or if you are using Microsoft Azure, you can get Windows 7 in the cloud. You can run it in the cloud and get support up there. But if you're running it on your endpoint standalone, just as the standard way, if you are one of the 31% of endpoints running Windows 7 or 15% of servers running 2008, make sure you're getting your stuff patched. And so we're going to talk about the patches that came out yesterday, the last free patches, as well as what you can do to lock down your machines and prepare for an upgrade. So they received what was their last free vulnerability patches. Shared between the two, today's update covers 22 CVEs. Are we ready? Deep breath, ready. CVE 2020-0605, 0606, 0607, 0608, 0611, 0615, 0620, 0625, 0626, 0627, 0628, 0629, 0630, 0631, 0632, 0634, 0635, 0639, 0640, 0642, 0643, and 0646. Windows Server 2008 also had an additional CVE 0637. Did anybody just get bingo? Big question there. Standing out from this large list is CVE 2020-0620, a vulnerability that exists when Microsoft cryptographic services improperly handle a file, giving an attacker the opportunity to modify a protected file. While this exploitation would require an attacker having access and ability to execute on the machine, there are no shortage of weaponized but patchable exploits out in the wild that can provide this kind of access. And while the end of support happened today, this one simple vulnerability should be a reminder to all of us that today is the day to ensure all legacy endpoints are up to date and the security protocols and procedures surrounding these devices are centered on restricting access, securing third-party software, and minimizing the overall attack surface. We're going to go over that list here in a quick second. Just as with any device, all it takes is one endpoint to become the victim of attack to put the rest of the network at risk. Once an attacker is inside, the fight against data theft and manipulation and lateral movement gets exponentially more difficult. So what is our plan? What are we suggesting for you all if you're running a legacy operating system? First and foremost, establish a baseline audit of software and services and hardware. There are plenty of tools out there to help you do that. You can use the Automox console to see the software that's installed in your endpoints. There's other tools like Spiceworks out there that will help with hardware scanning, whatever you might need. With that, ensure your patch management software supports out-of-band OS along with third-party options. Now, I'm not going to say that you have to be using Automox. I would highly recommend you be using Automox because guess what? We support out-of-band OS along with third-party. But no matter who you are using, make sure that they are covering this. Because in the end, third-party software is going to be another avenue of attack inside these old operating systems. Minimize your attack surface by covering as much as you can. With that in mind, update all your third-party software. If your third-party software that you have installed on Windows 7 or Server 2008 does not support the legacy operating system, or the manufacturer has said that they will no longer support it, it is time to start looking for an alternative to that program. Make sure you get a support as long as possible. With that in mind as well, deploy all the patches. Deploy all the patches for Windows 7 and Server 2008. Put this into perspective. Server 2008 had over 1,300 individual vulnerabilities patched in its lifetime. That's 1,300 opportunities of access, 1,300 opportunities of an organization, malicious organization, trying to get in and taking advantage of the lax security. Set up third-party endpoint monitoring for risks and local changes, and deploy an advanced EPP to detect, prevent, and respond to attacks early in the attack chain. Now, this is a big one. A lot of the EPP products, endpoint protection products that are out there, the ones that are in the next generation category, the Silences, the CrowdStrikes, the SentinelOnes of the world, even some of the newer products coming out like Endgame, they are very good at detection, prevention, and response because that's how they're built off. Some of the legacy providers, in my opinion, not as strong in this suit because they require so many different services. But no matter who you are deploying out, make sure that they are covering this area. And finally, disable any services not in use. You've got SMB on Server 2008 and RDP on Windows 7. If you have to use RDP, change the default settings. If you need to have any help with that, guess what? Our community, the Automox Alive community, we've got a worklet that will help you disable RDP. We are currently working on for SMB as well. I hope that helps everybody. In that case, let's dive into Adobe. It's been a pretty light month from them. The first updates, they were actually the first ones to release a patch for this Patch Tuesday. They addressed two vulnerabilities, one marked critical, the other marked important. Adobe Illustrator CC for Windows received an update, APS V20-03, addressing CVE 2020, 3710, 3711, 3712, 3713, and 3714. That patch fixed a vulnerability, a critical vulnerability, in the popular graphic design tool that could be a key to the front door of a network if exploited. The exploitation of this critical memory corruption vulnerability could allow an attacker to modify the contents of a memory location, enabling them to execute arbitrary code on the vulnerable endpoint. While it is not reported if this exploit has actually been seen in the wild yet, patching against this critical bug is essential to minimizing the attack surface, as it is patching any other critical ones. In many organizations, the creative and design teams have access to business-sensitive information, such as financial reports or stock options or growth goals, or whatever they're working on for executive leadership, for new products, they have that access. If this bug was to be exploited, an attacker would have access to business sensitive data. And with that access, they could easily steal, modify, or corrupt the critical corporate files. So we need to start looking at our design teams to make sure that they are protected. Following the Critical Illustrator patch is an update for Adobe Experience Manager addressing CVE 2019 16466, 16467, 16468, and 16469. The security update impacts all platforms and resolves a vulnerability that could lead to sensitive information disclosure when the application fails to properly secure the local confidential data that it handles. Typically exploited during an information gathering attack. Successful use of this vulnerability would provide a hacker sensitive information needed later in the attack cycle. So it's not something that's going to necessarily pop up right away, but it's going to give somebody the information that they need to move a little bit quicker throughout your network and endpoint to get what they need. So definitely patch up on that case. Now, I'm going to pass it over to Adam, a right-hand man. Adam, would you like to take it away and run off this demo and show the good people this?
You got it. Thanks, Richard, for passing it over. And I'll take control just here in a second. But I wanted to kind of kick off before I take control here of what we're going to be doing here in this demo and really what we focus on. So the last time I was on this, we talked about reducing your attack surface. And that's what we're really focused here at Automox is making you a smaller target by reducing your attack surface. And how we do that is using the fundamentals of cyber hygiene, ensuring that we're patching your systems, the software native to the OS, and also third-party applications, and deploying the software across your environment, and then also controlling device configurations. So what I'm going to focus on today is the controlling device configuration piece, which is done through worklets. And that is a key area to ensure that you're hardening your endpoints and protecting yourself against cyber attacks. So what we want to talk about today is password policies. And passwords are really important for endpoints. You got to make sure that you're meeting certain requirements. So those passwords are not easily exploited by different malwares or attackers coming into your environment. And as IT environments grow, IT sprawl increases, and the size and the complexity on which your IT environment is increases as well. And by doing that, you increase the likelihood of attackers compromising credentials. So as IT sprawl grows within your environment, the likelihood of passwords being compromised does increase. In fact, a 2019 study done by Verizon revealed that compromised credentials are the leading cause of data breaches. So it's very important that you're always monitoring what your password settings are for users across your desktop Windows environment. So how is that done today? Well, IT admins usually use a GPO policy that needs to be that the device actually needs to be connected to some sort of domain controller or some sort of domain in order for us to be able to patch that through a GPO or to be able to control those device configurations. That's how it's done today. And if you can get through the complexity of the GPO policies that you're running across your environment and also be able to connect all your devices to that domain controller, then you may have a good luck actually controlling that data drift issue we see in device configurations today. However, you see these rogue devices that really have no domain access or domain control. They're devices that are being used by remote sales teams or remote workers that may never even connect to your domain. Those are the ones that we're really worried about. Those have to be configured the same because they have the same type of exploits that attackers can use at any type of internet connection. So those are the ones we're trying to catch, right? So how we're going to do that today is using worklets. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. What I'm going to show you right now is what the Center of Internet Security recommendations are for password policies. This is their main first recommendations when configuring your endpoints. Their number one recommendation for any endpoints across any of your environments is to patch your systems. That's the first and foremost, right? Which we handle very well natively within the Automox platform. But let's move on to the other things that CIS recommends to do to harden your endpoints, right? And that is a password policies under account policies. So these are the top recommendations, and here's what really we're focusing on, right? These are the ones that we're really gonna try to apply across those environments and across those devices that are outside any corporate domain policies or GPO policies. So how do we do this? We do this through worklets. So I'm going to go on really fast and I'm going to show you what the worklet looks like. And then also I'm going to show you a device that we're actually going to be configuring from a password policy perspective. So let's take a look at the device first. So I'm I'm going to move this bar here real fast, and I'm going to bring up just a VMware Fusion Windows device. And we're looking at just a device that's currently reporting into my console. And this is the device we're actually going to do manipulation of the passwords through that worklet. Okay, so what I just did is I pulled the security policies that we currently have on this device, and then we're going to actually look at those security policies from the command line. So we can see here that these are all the current settings of this device, and we can see that we have some pretty bad settings here. You know, we have some maximum passwords. Password complexity is equals 0. That means the password complexity is disabled, so they can use basic passwords. The password length is 5. You can see these are just really bad password configurations that happen across environments all the time, right? And if you don't have corporate access to a network to do all these changes through a GPO policy, these things are always going to be out of compliance. And we can see that very easily if we actually pull up the password policies. This reflects what we see in that configuration. We can see that our maximum password age is 120 days. That means passwords ages are for 4 months, so they use the same passwords. We don't want that to happen. These are just bad configurations. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a zero-touch policy to actually change all these configurations for us in one hit. So we'll go back here to our policy, and let's take a look at the policy really fast. So we can see that I'm not doing any evaluation. Your evaluation can be whatever you want. You can evaluate if a certain one of those values are set to a bad parameter, then to go ahead and fail evaluation and run remediation. However, in my case, I'm just going to run this every day to make sure all my devices that this policy is connected to are within the compliance of the passwords. So we can look at the code here. We can see that we're incorporating all those different password policies within this, and these are totally customizable. So you can customize them to whatever they want based on what the CIS recommends, or you can just go with the default policies that we currently have here that kind of match what the CIS recommends from a password policy perspective. So you don't have to do anything, or you can configure this. And this is totally available in our community page today. So you can literally copy and paste this into your worklets and run it to any devices today. And you can see you can make changes to it or just run it as is. And we also have this policy we're going to configure it to run every day. So if we do this, we can run this policy every day. So we know that we're trying to make these password changes on a daily basis. Go ahead and do it. Okay, so now we're set, and now we can see that this passwords policy is going to run every day and making sure that we're always configured. Okay, so let's go ahead and run that policy. So I'm going to go to the device that we're looking at, which is Falcon 1, and it's located here. And if we go inside the policy or the device itself, we can see that we see the password policy, the account password policy that we want to run. And when we run this, it should instantly change those configurations for us. So I'm going to go ahead and run the device. Okay, so immediate remediation is started, and let's go back to the device and see if it did any reflections of those changes. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to go ahead and clear this out, and I'm going to pull the new configuration, and then we're going to actually get the contents of that configuration. And if we look at the very top here, we can see that some of these values have now changed. Our password complexity is 1, our password age is 30. So these passwords are now configured within what the CIS recommends from a Windows perspective of password policies. And we can see this reflection if we open up a new instance of our security policy UI. We can see the account policies under password policies have now all changed to those recommended CIS benchmarks. Password history is 24, remember it's 24, so you cannot use the same password you've used in 24 times. Password age is 30 days. We've enabled that complexity, so you have to use a complex password. We've disabled reversible encryption, which allows attackers to decrypt encrypted passwords. So this is what the CIS recommends for a password policy, all in one hit, done with worklets. Now, this is what we've done with password policies. Again, we're focused on endpoint hardening, which is in line with device configurations from a CIS perspective. We're going to keep bringing these out on a cadence where you can have account lockout policies, the local policies will be changed, and any of the other CIS recommendations will be done and released through the community page and through Automox. So this is just another strategy that we're having to ensure that all of our users and prospects have their device hardened natively using this worklet platform. Okay, so I think that's all I have. So Richard, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to you.
Awesome, Adam. Thank you so much. I hope everyone was able to get something out of that. You know, as you can tell, our focus here is definitely to help you harden your endpoints, help you implement good cyber hygiene controls and practices, because ultimately you need to minimize your attack surface. There's so many vulnerabilities out there, and so many ways that attackers can get into your infrastructure. Sometimes it's just through simplistic means, like, somebody's password has been compromised. Let's just try to make it as difficult for them as possible. So with that in mind, we'd like to open it up to Q&A. Any questions, comments, concerns? This is definitely the time to raise your hand. Post it inside the chat. We'd like to answer any of them that are coming up. Let's see, Q&A. Martin is asking, Richard, are the patches from Microsoft already available on our platform? I believe they are. I'm going to confirm. Adam, are they already up in the platform?
Yeah, exactly. Well, if your device is seeing those Microsoft updates available for the device and superseding other installed updates, then absolutely. We basically reflect whatever repository you're currently using as your source of truth for patching. So if you're using Windows Updates and Windows Updates is advertising those new superseded patches, then we'll pull in those and advertise them within our platform, and you can patch them at any point in time.
Awesome. That's a great question, Martin. I mean, I know that that's always a big concern is, are we manually doing it? 99.9% of the time, we are not manually putting those CVEs in. There's a few that, just because it's not tracking to one database or another, we will ensure that it is in there. But for the most part, it is pulling in on there. On the chat side, is there an ETA on the 1903 to integrate with patching? Our users have no admin rights, so we have been unable to deploy 1903. Adam, you want to take a stab at that one?
You got it. Yeah, 1903 had some caveats that changed within the way they Microsoft Windows handles feature updates like that. However, we have created a worklet that is an automatic one-click 1903 worklet that's available on our community page today. I'll make sure that one of our guys sends you the link to this directly, Josh, so you know how to access it. But as soon as you copy and paste that worklet or copy and paste that PowerShell code into a worklet and run that worklet across all of your devices, what it's going to do is going to curl down the 1903 ISO image depending on what architecture that your OS is running on, either 64 or 32-bit. When it does the curl, it's going to pull that ISO down to a temp directory, and then is going to actually perform the install using that ISO. So it mounts the ISO, and then it uses the setup.exe contained in that ISO to actually perform the install. And that setup.exe can have different arguments like no reboot, silent install. You can add your license keys for your Windows device. So it should all work for you. So that is already available today in our community page. So you should be able just to utilize that.
Hope that helps. Josh, if you need to get a hold of Adam right away, you can always reply directly to those emails that come from me to let you know about those webinars, and we will we'll make sure that gets over to him. But yeah, he will work with support if he right after this. And
yep, Josh, I'll contact you directly, and we'll get it working.
Paul, great question from you on this one. Can worklets use Python if Python is present on a machine?
So basically, Python is present on the machine a couple ways. So if you're running through Python, if you're manipulating a command on ISE like PowerShell or Bash, then obviously the Python script should work since you're going to be running it through Bash. But just remember that worklets interact with the ISEs that are on the OSs. So if you're using PowerShell or using Bash, that's what we use. So if the Python script is created to manipulate or use Bash or PowerShell, then it can be done. But if you're going to be just sending commands down through a Python script, the agent won't be able to actually deploy it because the agent actually can't execute executable code that just exists on a device.
I hope that answers your question, Paul. Awesome. Well, thank you everybody so much for joining us today. I hope that moving us up from a Thursday to a Wednesday is helping you be a smaller target, helping you to minimize your attack surface, helping you to patch your shit a lot sooner. As always, you can reach out to us and connect us on social media. We are on Spiceworks. We are on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. You're all welcome to join us on those conversations, see what's going on with their culture, as well as ask us questions. If you have any questions directly to me, as I mentioned to Josh before, you get the emails from me, from Richard Melick. Reply back. Just press reply, and I will get the right person on it that needs to be on it. If you have any support questions, reach out to our support team. As always, we want you to patch your shit. We want you to be safe and secure out there. Thank you so much for joining. Adam, say goodbye to the people.
Yeah, thanks again, Richard, for having me. Thanks for everyone joining. I always love doing these. Feel free to reach out to me directly as well, adam@automox.com, with any of these questions. And again, thanks for joining, and we'll see you guys next month.
Awesome. Thanks all.